Hi there. Welcome back to the Lighthouse Sessions. Today, I'm really excited. I have my new friend, Dr. Lois Reid, with me. Dr. Lois, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
I've had a little bit of an eclectic background. Currently, I have just recently left work with a partnership in a digital marketing agency and have gone back to being a solopreneur and am serving an audience of people who have chronic health challenges. I've had chronic illnesses myself for over 30 years. So I've navigated the waters, and what I really work with people now to do is design business strategies and marketing that allows them to take into consideration their capacity and their special needs within their business, because I found many of the traditional strategies that came out of the hustle culture and doing more to be tied to your self-worth and all of that just don't work for those of us who have chronic health challenges. So we need a different way of approaching things.
I love it. And I would argue that that hustle culture also contributes enormously to those health challenges. Would you agree?
Oh, certainly. And, burnout rates are higher, chronic illness rates keep climbing and such. So as a culture, it's something we've really got to look at.
I love that. And for what it's worth, I see a disproportionate burnout rate in an audience that I call visionary entrepreneurs. And the challenge is we can imagine what the future will be, and we work really hard to get there. But sometimes we forget that, I once said, it's really disappointing to find out I'm human and I need maintenance.
It is a struggle. Some of my human design blueprint is I'm a projector and a visionary. So my mind is always taking into consideration systems and frameworks and how can I build this and that. And I have to be really conscientious about, slowing down, allowing myself some time and prioritizing, because you can't do all the things. It's just not possible. And, as entrepreneurs, we have a tendency to have a lot of ideas. Many entrepreneurs also have characteristics of, ADHD or on the spectrum in some way. And all those things come into play of sometimes allowing and causing us to be more scattered and look at that next shiny object that we see in front of us and go, oh, that would be great. Why don't I think about how I could use that? And again, it just kind of piles one thing on top of the other. And if we're not careful, not only do we go down rabbit holes that aren't productive, but we also stress ourselves out because at the end of the day, we haven't accomplished the tasks that are really important to get done.
I love that. And I think you unpacked so much there. And that was my accidental observation. A lot of the people I know that I see as visionary, we are definitely on at least one spectrum or two. And the cool part is it's where spectrums collide. It's like, it's not, we can put a little list there and say, here's what we are. It's all relative to each other and things like that. But I do find my friend, Dr. Doug Brockman, says we have a horizoning trait that if we leave it unchecked, we will let today self. So I always say today Jeff could starve to death while future Jeff is off exploring the world. And a lot of people, so I'll share this with you, Lois, because it was funny to discover it. I have an incredibly angry face if somebody breaks my deep concentration. And it's not a purposeful thing. And people always say, oh, why do you look so angry? It's like, I'm not angry. You just brought me back to the present when I was off exploring. And it's jarring to be pulled back into the present. Mm-hmm. So I've taught my wife and kids, if dad's gazing out the window, don't scare him, because I may growl when you touch me, but I think that's the challenge with a lot of these visionary entrepreneurs, ourselves included, is we forget that there's a moment today. And that's been my lesson, is how do I anchor to today so that I can safely explore, next 10 years and then know when it's time to come back.
Right, and know how to transition between the two, being mindful and in the present moment. And certainly, there's some good exercises to work on that, to bring yourself to that place, but also allowing ourselves to go into the future, because that's where some of us do our best work, as we are dreaming about the potential and what can be and the impacts that can be made in the future. So it's knowing how to navigate that balance, and being aware of kind of where you are dividing your time and making a conscious decision about that.
I love that. And I think the other thing I would say is, as somebody who identifies as neurodiverse, sometimes we don't have the executive functioning capability to do those things. So I've learned some cheats, and I want to hear yours, but anything that's meaningful, there's an alarm here that says, I'm not kidding, feed yourself, go feed your kids, go pick up kids, go pick up wife. I have alarms for everything that is mission critical in both home and business, because I don't perceive time. I can sit here for 6 hours working on a problem, and I'll be like, oh, just 5 more minutes. And then 10 hours later, oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's certainly one way. And one of the things I've been doing a lot more of is incorporating AI into the work that I'm doing and with clients, because it allows me, once we get the AI trained, to really kind of customize and streamline, so that by asking a series of questions or having some custom GPTs, then a client can tune into the AI as a coach. And now with the task functioning coming on board, you can even set the task that says, oh, have you had a drink of water in the last 30 minutes? And make that as something that goes out as a push notification or an email. And there's going to be even more and more of that coming, and something I'm looking at in my field, because of, we know the development of all the mobile tracking devices and apps and those kinds of things, that are going to become even more prevalent as we, work in our health conditions with all of that. So, how do we incorporate those systems into our work? So, for example, I've built some tracking sheets that have people talk about the tasks that they regularly do, and some suggestions about recurring tasks for entrepreneurs and that kind of thing. And then equating that to things such as kind of like your energy level and your level of distraction, your level of pain, so that on any given day, you can go through and answer a few simple questions of like, here's how I'm feeling at the moment. And then based on how you've responded in the past, of which tasks are easier, which require more effort on your part, then you can come back with a suggestion of like, well, you've got 30 minutes now as a time block, and this is the level that you are experiencing at the moment. This would be a good recurring task for you to work on now. So it just takes some of that decision fatigue that we may get stuck, lost in the weeds, even thinking about what should I do next, and spend way too much time thinking about that, to really tapping into some of the new systems available to us now to help with that.
I love that. And for what it's worth, you're speaking my language here, because I discovered it by accident, and now I can't unsee it. AI is literally like the ADHD brain. It can go all over the place, and then all of a sudden laser focused to a point, and then it becomes almost obtuse because all it sees is that point. And other people are busy trying to figure out how to use AI. And for me, it was just, I met the other half of my brain. It was like, oh my God, where have you been? And I'm loving what I'm hearing from you, because I started doing some things that I thought, people are like, oh, you can't do that, that's weird, whatever. And right now I have a little army of custom GPTs, and people say, oh, that's that's a waste of time. And I'm like, is it? It literally takes that unscratchable itch out of my head, puts it somewhere. And when I have 10 minutes, I can go and use that custom GPT, and we'll finish something that used to take me, I'm going to share something, maybe I shouldn't, but it used to take me an hour to do. I can do it in 10 minutes. But what I do say to people is, with ADHD, I can get more done in an hour than most people get it done in a month. But sometimes it takes me a month to get to that hour, because time is so relative. What do you think?
It is true. I recently took a program called Zenith Mind, and it was really working with AI, so it got to know your personality as opposed to focusing so much on business side of things, and found it extremely valuable. So now, because I've trained the AI so much about my personality, that it can act as a life coach, a business coach, strategist, and it's even improved things that I'm doing on the business side, because now it knows me as a person and my audience and what I love doing and working with people about, that's in the memory. It crosses over, like when I'm trying to write a sales page or an email sequence and such, that it gives you so much better of that first draft, that not nearly as much editing is needed. And the more you work with AI and get it to understand you as a person and also about your business, the greater of an asset it becomes.
I love that. And I think that's the way I see this. A lot of people are anti-AI, which boggles my brain, because it's like saying I'm anti-electricity, I'm anti-medicine, I don't believe in the sun. AI is here, it's not going away. If it goes away, humanity's got a bigger problem, because something went wrong. We're all off the grid. But the other thing, and I've found AI is a wonderful, I love the quote, iron sharpens iron. And AI, if you use it right, I find it is the most absolutely fantastic journaling exercise, because, I will ask questions that are unanswerable. My number one question is, why do I annoy neurotypical people, and vice versa? Why do they annoy me? And it's just fascinating, because it gives me that perspective shift. When I'm in hyper-focused mode and somebody wants my attention, they're not going to get it. No matter how many times they yell at me. My wife gets annoyed because my phone will ring, and if I'm in mid-thought, I turn it over and ignore it. And she's like, aren't you going to answer that? That's annoying. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't notice it after, I physically turn it over. That's me saying I'm ignoring you. But it is funny, because I think we do have very different brains. Now I'm going to share something else I think I want your opinion on. A lot of people talk about the dynamic between, this is EOS language, and don't worry about the language, but they talk about the visionary and the integrator. And I've been in a few communities, and I realized I don't want to hang out with the integrator community, because God bless them, they see us as a problem to be solved. We're the wild Mustang that needs to be penned in. And really, truly, I think it's about recognizing, number one, who we are. And so for me, I have times when I'm, quote, in the lab and I'm playing, and my job is to break something. But I've also learned not to bring my integrators into the lab, because they're, oh my God. So what would you say to that dynamic? Because I feel like you've probably spent some time in there.
Yeah, my first career was in higher education, and my doctorate's in adult education. I worked on college campuses for 20 years before I went into coaching and marketing and such. And, we had a couple different terms, didn't call them integrators, but I worked on a team, and everybody was of the persuasive personality type, except for me. And they wanted to make decisions based on, oh, we can sell this to our staff really easily, so this is the best option. And me being much more strategic and planning and visionary in mind would just drive me up the wall, because I'm like, but that's not the best decision, because X, Y, and Z. And so I think you're right. You need to understand who's in the room, and how you may choose to either play with them or not play with them, or communicate to that particular group of people when you need to be working with them, because they are operating out of a whole different part of their personality, their brain, in how they're relating to the world.
I love it. Well, I'm going to share something you probably have thought of, but it's made my life incredibly easy. So first of all, I now curate the rooms depending on the time of day and my energy level. I can mask and go hang out with the integrators, but really it's not in anybody's best interest to do so. So I take the mask off and hang out with people like us. But one of the things I did was I've created translator GPTs. So I have one, and I figured out there's about 4 layers that I need to get down to get to the real. Personally, if somebody wants to talk about what's my next step, my head explodes. I am not the guy to go through, and help a VA master the steps to post a video on YouTube. But what I've done is I've created translator bots, and I share them with the team. So they're trained to go down from Jeff to, so I'm out in space visionary, and then I have somebody orbiting Earth as sort of the strategic vision, and then I have the 10,000 foot view, and then I have the ground view. And I trained the bots to translate one step at a time, up and down. So when something starts at my level, it's, I have a dream, I have a vision, here's what's going to happen. And in the old days, people roll their eyes and go, oh, here we go. But then on the other end, it's like, I'm stuck uploading YouTube. I don't see this link. How do I do this? And it translates into the strategic language. I find it fascinating because everybody's saying AI is going to ruin humanity. I think it's an opportunity for us to all communicate better.
I agree with you. I think the people that struggle with AI in terms of acceptance so much are folks who either see it being used in a very rudimentary way, where you can tell it's AI because it's kind of like, how you doing today is the first thing out of its mouth kind of thing. And so part of it's an educational piece of helping people understand that you are treating the AI more as kind of like your junior intern, and how you need to interplay with AI in terms of asking questions and providing feedback and that kind of thing. I find the microphone to be particularly useful for a lot of people, so they get out of their brain in terms of thinking about what they need to type, or constructing the perfect prompt, and just get into action mode of asking the question and then refining things if you're getting an answer that isn't what you were looking for. So I think that's a big piece of it. And also recognizing, I know kind of my first exposure back several years ago, 2 years ago, was people claiming that they could go out and build courses and that kind of stuff with just, a couple keywords and a phrase. And having taught on the college level and the graduate level for students and such, those kinds of things drive me up the wall. And it's like, yeah, you can do that, but you're going to get crap for a course, and it's not going to be valuable to anybody. Now, if you teach the AI, instructional design models, and, build in your expertise around the subject matter, then you can create a great course with AI. But it's really helping people understand how to properly use it, and the limitations, and what good usage looks like and what problematic usage looks like.
I love that. And I rant a lot about the GIGO effect, which is garbage in, garbage out. And I think, between us, if you want, yes, you can put in a couple keywords and create a course, and it's going to be garbage.
Mm-hmm.
Worse, it's going to be very loud and confident garbage. And I always say, we're the grown-up at the keyboard. We need to know enough to say, oh, sweetie, you missed the mark there. Just
Mm-hmm.
back up and work it out. And I see with the right expertise, it really amplifies your genius. If you're a 9 out of 10, it can get you to a 12 very easily. But if you're a 4 out of 10, it'll get you to a 1 very quickly too.
Right, because you don't know what you don't know, and it's giving you information. And even if you're using like a deep research component on it, you still don't have, if you don't know your audience and you don't know the content well, you don't know how to give it the feedback to say, no, you're off base here, and we need to back up and look at this aspect. And it's important that we incorporate this particular module or session in the course, because this is what's going to be valuable to my audience.
Yeah. And I think that's key. The other thing I would love your opinion on, because I don't meet many people with doctorates in education, I obsess over learning styles. Now, it could be because I've suffered through other people's learning styles, and it's also I'm a father and I have 2 kids and I want them to learn well. One of the things I created, I call it my prism effect, but I am a dominant reader-writer. If you want me to pay attention, learn something, give me the book, give me something. And for whatever reason, it has to be the book or something on my big screen. Do not send it to my phone. I will scream at you and tell you you're stupid. I don't mean to. There's a trigger reflex. But one of the things I found that's fascinating is so much of corporate learning is here's the policy manual. I can read it and learn it, but then there's the lecture style where nobody's paying attention. I feel like AI is this golden age where we can now customize education to the learner, not to the teacher. Is that fair?
I think it is very fair, because not only can you adjust it to learning styles and where some people may get caught up, like I'm like a reflective observer, kind of on the learning style. Whereas if somebody else is active experimentation, it's like they're not going to learn by reading the textbook and absorbing the information in the same way that I do. They need to get out there with hands-on experiments to, really understand the concepts and such. And so we can build that into, training that we're doing, so that we take into account like lots of different learning modalities, and allow people to kind of choose the track that they go down based on their learning style and the level that they may be at within that particular learning style. That if I'm struggling around concepts related to this topic, I may need to initially start out with some simpler things until I get that down, and then I want to move on to more advanced.
Yeah, and I think that's the key with learning is you need to meet people where they are. And what I love about AI, and I think Sal Khan from Khan Academy has sort of talked about this, if we meet the learner where they are, they'll master it and move forward. Otherwise, we're just adding layers of guilt and shame and things like that.
You get frustrated and you want to check out because it just seems like, you can't master what you think you're supposed to be mastering.
Yeah. Now, in true irony, I actually read an article online yesterday about a university professor who banned AI in his classroom, and he failed and pushed any student, he kicked them out of the class if he caught them using AI, until the students took his AI generated notes, took it to the dean and said, fair's fair. Like, AI is not evil. It is a learning tool if we learn to use it right. Is that?
Well, and the challenge for professors these days is, when you're asking people to, or giving out assignments, you can't give out assignments now based on like knowledge recall, because people can go to AI and get the knowledge. It's got to be something where you're asking your students to apply what they have learned and how they go about applying that. And that's a shift in paradigm for some people that were used to more of, here's the facts and regurgitate them to me to, get through this particular course. And I mean, I even saw it. I had an extern from my college here over spring break, and he was sort of complaining and sort of just bemoaning the fact that he didn't understand why he was getting asked so many like weird questions in job interviews for like a summer position.
Yeah.
And, one of them had to do something with like, if you were to create a food truck, what kind of food truck would you design? And he's like, that's just off the wall. I'm not doing anything with food trucks. I said, well, let me tell you kind of from an employer's perspective of why sometimes you get asked what may seem as off the wall questions.
Yeah.
It's like, one, people want to see how well you can think on your feet. Two, it does say something about your personality in terms of what you might select and your reasoning behind what you might select, and being able to communicate that in a coherent way to an employer is an important skill. So what may seem like, as coming from left field, people often have reasons for that, and sometimes you just have to play the game not understanding the reasons, but then getting some insight later.
Well, and I think that the myth I hear is that AI will ruin imagination. I use it to sharpen mine. And I actually heard about somebody who plugged in the job description, plugged in their resume, and said, please refresh my resume so that I can apply for this job. And the job said must have this certification, this designation, yada, yada. So the resume came out and said, I have these things. And then the employee submitted it. It was somebody who didn't speak English as a native language. So they just said, oh, AI did it. They submitted it. And when the recruiter asked, when did you complete this designation? And they said, what are you talking about? I don't have that. Well, it says on your resume you did. Well, that's AI's fault. It put it there. And I'm like, you're still the adult reading the resume saying, yes, this is me. And I think that's what people miss. Now I'm going to share a little weirdness for you, Lois, because I have a teenage son and he is brilliant. He's top of his class when he wants to be, but he also gets bored easy. He's obviously like his father's son. And so I got him to build his own tutor. So we talked about, how do you do this? How do you do that? We created the tutor. And then when he wasn't looking, I slipped in a little bit of Socratic training. So whenever he asks a question, it asks him a question. And it is fascinating because he's learning better because he's learning the questions that matter.
Yeah, can make a vast difference.
Yeah. And so it is funny because everything we know about Socrates, I put that into my AI models and suddenly.
And again, that's because you have some of the background to know that that's a valuable experience for somebody. And many people wouldn't come from that perspective necessarily. And so they aren't aware of how they should be working with their AI.
And I say, everybody asks, what's the key to success with AI? And my key, I'm going to use one word. I want to hear yours. My key is curiosity. It asks me a question. I ask, why did you ask me that question? It asks me, gives me an answer. I ask, why did you give me that answer? I learn by learning with my study buddy.
I guess two words came to mind for me. One is experiment, because I find a lot of people, especially in the early stages, spend way too much time thinking about how they should interact with AI to try to get the perfect answer out of AI. And it's kind of like, you just got to get in there and do it and start talking to it and figure out that if it's not giving you what you need to tell it so, because it's only gonna give you the answers that it thinks you are asking for. And so if that's not what you're asking for, figure out a different way to rephrase it or tell it, no, that's not what I'm looking for, and such. And then, the other word that comes to mind is, I guess it's not a single word, but the willingness to engage in conversation with AI. So that you're not accepting what it's giving you as God's truth, but you are having back and forth conversations, you are learning from it, you are massaging it, finessing it to give you the most accurate, on point information that you can for the purpose you're trying to accomplish.
I love that. And I think a lot of people think it's kind of like the drive-through at Starbucks. You go through, you tell it what you want, you get your coffee and go. I think it's more like going to a bistro in Italy, and you're going to, fumble with the language at first, but you're going to find out what you want to order. And then they're going to say, oh, maybe you should try this. It's about experimenting. And I think the beautiful thing, I've heard people say, oh, I don't know how to code it, so I'm not going to use it. I'm like, it's a large language model. The language is the part you need to know. It's a communication tool. All right. Well, you and I can nerd out about AI all day. I promise there's probably going to be a sequel to this. Let's talk about what it means to work with you. What does that look like? Because I think one of the things I like to do with this podcast is find resources that can help my people. And anytime somebody says I help people overcome chronic health problems, I'm in. So what does it mean to work with Dr. Lois?
It can take a couple different forms. I am in the process of creating a beta program for people who either want to start on an entrepreneurial journey or have tried some things. They may have bought courses and programs and gotten really frustrated because they couldn't accomplish what they needed to accomplish. So they're still in very early stages. And that's the program that I do bring a lot of AI into, but you don't need to know AI to be able to really benefit from the program. And it helps people basically go through, look at kind of where they are, what their health challenges are, what their concerns are, how many hours a week you can even put into a business. And then helps build out several suggestions for here's types of business models that you might consider. And I've got another custom GPT that, and you don't have to be, again, familiar with that terminology, but helps you select your audience of people that you really resonate with, because you either have experience in that area or it lights you up to be around those kinds of people. And then we kind of go through looking at those elements, building out a really solid structural foundation for a business and validating it to make sure it's going to work in terms of the income you need to make and the available audience that's out there and what you would charge and all those recommendations and such. So it gets people kind of an extra started push and going. So that's a group program that I work with people on. And then for people that are a little further along in business and they already have some of that initial work done, but still don't feel like they're making the progress and the traction that they should be able to make and are struggling. I also do private one-on-one coaching with them where we can look at, things that are working well, things that they're struggling with. Are there things that we can do? Both at looking at the system and making some adjustments, or automation that we can build into your business that's really going to help. Or, maybe you need to bring in an AI agent or a outsourcer. So really kind of walking through a bunch of those different pieces on a customized basis to see what's going to be the best solution for the person.
I love that. And there's a couple of words that I want to pull out of it because I think a lot of visionaries, we resist them. But you talked about systemization and automation. And I don't know if you saw me smiling because those are two of my favorite words. Let's talk about AI as a system. And, that for me was a big aha with a custom GPT. It's not some random thing I throw it at the wall and hope something sticks. I craft mine with a process. I have a process for creating a process, but basically I take the AI and I turn it into it's my process, and then I know with confidence it'll follow it. One of the things I found was I can give it to my employees, my team, and they'll be better because of it.
I think it helps both in terms of as a CEO and managing other people, and it helps just in terms of managing yourself, because I know there's times if I don't have a process, I'll go back and recreate the same thing I've created before, not remembering that I created it 3 months ago, and that's a bunch of wasted time and brain power and everything else. And we're really looking how we can conserve energy to be more efficient, more productive with the time that we do have. And so, looking at systems and frameworks is really important. I think it's going to be even more important as we continue with the advancement of AI and having AI agents doing some of our work for us. If we can build that into kind of customized, systemized processes. My mind often works backwards, so I'll look at the end outcome that I want and then reverse engineer it from that point. And I'm pretty good with that. I'm not a detailed person at all. So I know if there's a whole bunch of kind of routine details that need to be done over and over again, that's either got to be an AI agent for me or an outsourced worker. But, and everybody has their own sweet spot that they need to know, because I know a person that has done some work for me in the past that she absolutely loves like all the details and getting down into the weeds and such. And so, as people learn about their selves and their style and where's their strengths, and that's also a great place for collaboration partners, because, some of us are great at the visionary part and reverse engineering and the frameworks, and other people just don't think that way. And they need some help in terms of setting up those systems. They can follow them once they're set up, but they need some guidance in terms of setting up the systems.
I love that. And I'm sure you do something similar. I need to know the end. Do not give me instructions to build IKEA furniture. It makes me angry. Those little pictures, I don't think that way, but give me the box. I lay the pieces out. I look at the end picture and I go, okay, here's how I would approach it. And then sometimes I go the wrong way and I have to start over. But one of the things I do with computer stuff is I'm now in the habit of I record it as I'm figuring it out, and then I transcribe it, and then I'll say to AI, here's how I got from A to B. Give me the shortcut so that my team can deal with this. And it fascinates me. The number one thing I hear, I don't have time to learn it. So Lois, I want your thoughts on that phrase. I'll share my rant after, but I want to hear your rant first.
Well, there's two schools of thought. One is, okay, I hear you. Do you need to learn this for a reason? And if your answer is yes, because it's critical to the work that I do, then it's like you need to figure out an efficient way to learn that. Not only so you understand it, but so that you can share it with your clients, with your team, and anyone else who needs to know. So that's always kind of the first thing that I, look at. But most people, if it's a critical area of their business, unless they are totally going to outsource it and can trust with like no questions asked, they've got to learn it to be able to oversee it as a manager.
I love that. I have a very simple answer, And you love the simplicity and the passive aggressiveness of it, I hope. I say to people, if you believe you don't have time, I believe you. And I've stopped, because the old me, I would fight it. And I was like, I'm going to shine the light in your cave, whether you want it or not. Now I'm like, you know, if you want to hang out in the cave in the dark, I'm not here to bug you. But what I learned was, whether you believe AI can help you or not, it's true, because you will find a way, or you will find a way to stop finding a way. So that's my little rant, because when I look at it, I can do more with AI in a week than I used to do in a year. And I'm not here to convince somebody else that they want it, you know, because between us, I spent 3 years learning it to get to this point.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I say, you know, to my audience. It's like, you don't have to know it to be able to really benefit from it. That's some of the things that we will work on as we are working through the process. But if you really resist it and think it doesn't have any role to play, then you're not my audience. Because I see the value in how it can help people that do have lots of challenges. And those are the people I want to work with, because they're the ones that are going to make progress.
I love it. And I think that's the aha moment. You know, I'm one of those guys who, I don't want to leave anybody in the burning building, so I try to save everyone. And it's like, sometimes people just want to sit and enjoy the fire. Okay. Now, if you do want to get out of the burning building, I'm happy to carry you, but you need to say, hey, help.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm going to introduce you to Erin Anatavi. She is a VA. She's neurodiverse, and she works with neurodiverse visionary entrepreneurs. And I feel like you two need to have a conversation, because I think you guys integrate really well, to use that phrase. Now, if somebody wanted to get to know you, find out how to work with you, how can they reach you? How can they get to know you?
I'm on LinkedIn, and so it's kind of a branded LinkedIn. It's LinkedIn, you know, .com/LinkedIn, and then Lois Reid. So LOISREID.
I love it. And I will, of course, put a link to that in the show notes. Now, I have a favorite last question. What are you most curious about right now?
I am just really curious, especially because of my audience, of where things are going in the next 5 years, and how much of what we currently need to track kind of offline. And we're just beginning to see the beginnings of it with smartwatches and other things that are going to be able to track, you know, like our pain levels and our distraction levels and our anxiety levels and all of that, just through wearable devices. And, you know, how much easier it's going to be to feed that information into AI and streamline some of the things that now I'm building out more with custom GPTs and spreadsheets.
I love that. And for what it's worth, Erin and I had a conversation about how wearable technology is going to impact us. And she's doing amazing things with building your count. So she comes at it from the VA side of things, the business. I think she calls it an online business manager. But her theory, and she's working to prove it, is that we can manage our energy with wearable devices. So we, as especially neurodiverse people, we can get reminded, oh, you need a nap, you need a snack, you need a drink, get up and walk. So I'm bringing together a bunch of people in that space, because one mind solving the problem is great, but every mind we add solves it faster and better. So
yeah, that sounds like fun.
I will make sure you two connect. Well, thank you so much, Lois, for hanging out with me and taking the time to be a guest on the show.
Thanks. It was a real pleasure chatting with you.